Good morning and happy Saturday, everyone. My name is Nick Marro with Occupy Fantasy. You can find me on Twitter at Nick Marro DFS. If you haven't already, please like the video. Also, subscribe to the channel. As always, I'm here to help you break down tonight's NBA DFS main slates on both DraftKings and FanDuel. This is my first video back since the break. Definitely looking forward to digging into this slate. We got a six-gamer tonight starting at 7 p.m. If you haven't already, check the links in the description below. To become a member of Occupy Fantasy today, you get access to the model you see here, which has ownership percentages. You can sort by value for each site. We also have a single lineup builder, multi-lineup builder, private Discord server where you can get access to seasoned DFS pros to help you improve your game. There's a 30-minute window leading up to each slate's lock where you can ask your lineup and slate-specific questions as well. Without further ado, let's get into this slate here. Just six games, should be pretty easy to get through. I'm going to go through team by team as I always do. I got a window for DraftKings and FanDuel open. I'll slowly start to build lineups as we talk through this video. Most of the teams are not on back-to-backs, which is good. There are a couple. Obviously, when there are teams on back-to-backs, how early we do these videos, they don't always have the injury reports out. So there's a couple spots we're going to have to kind of speculate. But yeah, we have most of the news we need, so let's get into it here. Let's start with the first game on the slate. We have the Pacers at the Magic. The Magic are 2.5-point favorites at home. We're looking at a 232-point game total here. So, no major injury news on either side of the ball. Just a couple G Leaguers that are listed as questionable. Kevon Harris. Really nothing we need to talk about. So let's start with the Pacers. Miles Turner coming off a massive game. He looks solid here. He's drawing over 20% ownership on both sites. He's reasonably priced at 7,300 on DK, AK over on FanDuel. The one issue with Turner is that he's taking up that center spot. He's no longer power forward eligible. I think they pulled it quicker on DK, but there was a point in this season where he was power forward eligible on both sides. So he's definitely tougher to get to than he has been. At the same time, though, this is a good matchup against Orlando. So I do think I want to get to a few shares. If you're playing multiple items, he's definitely someone to get into your player pool. Other Pacers I'm interested in, Tyrese Halliburton, no surprise there. He's a little bit more appealing on FanDuel where you're getting him sub 9K. Guys like Buddy Hield, Andrew Nemhard, even Benedict Mathurin as kind of boom bust guard options. They're all viable. None I would be prioritizing though. Yeah, it's a good game environment. There's just better value. These are two healthy teams. When you're dealing with healthy teams, kind of priced where they should be, it's tough to really prioritize anything. You're going to see as we talk through this slate that there is injury creating opportunity in other spots. So, no major priorities for me on the Pacers. I do like Miles Turner, but he's tougher to get to on FanDuel where you only have that one center spot. So let's move over to the Orlando side of the ball now. Again, no major injury news, no major injuries for the Magic. Wendell Carter Jr. does have that power forward eligibility over on FanDuel. I like him over there at just 6,700. We're looking at Fultz sub 7K on both sides still. He's been solid. It is a crowded backcourt now, though, that Jalen Suggs is healthy, Cole Anthony's healthy. They still have Gary Harris. They did get rid of Terrence Ross, but that's really not opening up many minutes. Ross really hasn't been a major staple in that rotation. So I like Fultz. I think he's fine. I also don't mind Anthony here, but I wouldn't call either a priority. Obviously, Fultz more consistent, probably a little bit more upside. So if I am picking a Magic guard, it would be Markel. But all that being said, I mean, I like the wings here. I mean, small forward, power forward are the thinner positions on the slate. I don't mind Franz Wagner. Paulo Banchero looks good on both sides as well. Those are probably my two favorite Magic players. Don't mind Wendell Carter, like I said, but he is taking up that center spot unless you use him at power forward over on FanDuel. So, decent spot here, high game total, but it's really tough for me to call a Pacer or a Magic a priority on this slate. So let's move into the other 7 o'clock game. We have the Heat at the Hornets. The Hornets are 5.5-point underdogs at home. 227.5-point game total here. So this one's going to be tricky. Both these teams are on back to backs. I'll start with the Hornets. Kelly Oubre's back, so that's going to cut into minutes for guys like Gordon Hayward. But we did see Gordon Hayward have a massive game last night. So while he is going to cut in Hayward's production a little bit, Hayward hasn't been playing his full run of minutes. So I do still like Gordon Hayward here. I think he's solid on both sites, especially on FanDuel where he's only 5,600. That does feel a little bit too cheap. Mark Williams, now that Mason Plumlee's out of the picture, he's a solid center option. He got in some foul trouble early last night. He missed most of the first half. He finished right around 20 fantasy points. Obviously not a great game or performance, but we're getting him sub 6K now on both sites. Not a great matchup against Miami, but I don't mind him as a value play in tournaments. LaMelo Ball, obviously the best player on the floor for the Hornets here in terms of fantasy production. He is expensive, but his price did come down on DK. We're getting him at 10-4 now instead of the 11K price he was at yesterday. So I do like LaMelo here. I think he's fine as long as he's in. Terry Rozier, another good guard play. You're getting it at discount, not nearly as much upside. But really tough matchup with Miami, and the total does look decent. It is pushing 230, but at the same time, if this team is healthy, there's no major priorities. The one piece of news we're going to have to keep an eye on is PJ Washington. He got injured during last night's game. No injury report yet, so there's no official questionable tag or anything like that. But if he's out, that should open things up. For maybe Hayward, maybe Oubre, and maybe Mark Williams. So we're going to have to wait and see. I don't think there's any major value with Washington out. But yeah, it's a situation certainly we have to keep an eye on. Let me take a look here at power forward. Yeah, they no longer have McDaniels. So I'm thinking maybe Nick Richards gets a little bit of a bump, but I can't imagine they want him on the floor at the same time as Mark Williams, so it's tough for me to want to go there. I think if anything, it secures minutes for Gordon Hayward. So I would like Gordon Hayward, like I mentioned, especially on FanDuel. He's going to be better if PJ Washington is out of the lineup. Maybe JT Thor starts. Not someone I'd ever be trusting, but if Thor does slide in the starting lineup, you could at least consider him for value. But really, not someone you want to be clicking on even a 6-game slate, which isn't huge, but JT Thor is just pretty terrible, for lack of a better word. So let's move over to the Miami side. Another team on a back-to-back, so it's going to be difficult to prioritize anything here. That being said, if Kevin Love starts again, I think he's one of the better value plays on the slate. So last night we did see Kevin Love slide into the starting lineup. Going to pull up his game log here. I'm going to zoom in. He only played 22 minutes, no points, but he did have 20 fantasy points. So he took a few shots, 4 threes, none of them fell, but he still hit value at 3K flat over on DK. If he starts again, this is an even better matchup, a much better matchup than what he saw last night against the Bucks. So Kevin Love is my first guy in on both sides as things stand. This is under the assumption that he's going to be starting, though. If he's coming off the bench, I'm not nearly as interested, but even at 4K on FanDuel, I think he's one of your better value plays. But yeah, I want to see him starting. I think he could play over 22 minutes. There's a chance maybe they rest him on the back-to-back, but I think it's more likely we just see him slide into the starting lineup where he's going to be one of the best value plays on the slate. Kyle Lowry's still out. But he's not even on the injury report for whatever reason. Oh yeah, they haven't released it yet. So keep an eye on that. Um, I think that should mean Gabe Vincent gets to start at point guard. Not someone I'm rushing to. Um, but yeah, I don't mind Tyler Hero here. He looks fine. 7,600 on FanDuel is okay. The 7,100 on DK is very appealing to me. I do like him a lot over there. It's just you have to keep in mind with Hero, he is very scoring dependent. Adebayo and Butler look solid on both sides. Wouldn't call either a priority, though, even in the excellent game environment. It's really Kevin Love for me here, and then you can mix Hero, Adebayo, Butler into your tournament lineups. Don't mind Gabe Vincent either, but I wouldn't call him a priority. But again, both these teams are on a back-to-back, so kind of wait and see. We need more news to really solidify things. But as long as Kevin Love is starting, he's your first man in as value on both sides. I like him a lot, and I would consider him a core play. So moving into the 7:30 window now. Let's take a look here. We got the Pelicans at the Knicks. Knicks are 3-point favorites at home, just a 224.5 point game total, so not a great total. On the Pelican side, Dyson Daniels is questionable, still no Zion. That's really the only significant news for them. On the Knicks side of things, Evan Fournier is questionable. He hasn't really been in the rotation, though, so not a major piece of news for them either. So the one thing I guess we're keeping an eye on here is Daniels for the Pelicans, but he hardly moves the needle for me. If Josh Richardson gets the start again, we're going to have to keep an eye on this. He'd look excellent over on DK. With Zion out, I do think there's a good chance we see Richardson in that starting lineup. I think, yeah, even if Daniels is in, he should be the starter here. I'm going to pull up his game log at just 4,200 coming in from the Spurs. He's very motivated right now. He hit value pretty easily against Toronto in under 30 minutes. So if he gets over 30 minutes here, he's a pretty safe bet to hit value over on DK, where we're paying 5,900 for him on FanDuel. I'm not nearly as interested. The Pelican I like on FanDuel is actually Brandon Ingram. He's only 7,800 over there. He's up around 8.5 over on FanDuel. So Ingram is a priority for me on FanDuel. at 7,800 on DK. If I misspoke, I apologize, but 8,500 over there on DraftKings. So Ingram's the better play over on FanDuel. Richardson's the better play over on DK. I think you could use Valanciunas in tournaments on either side. He's a boomer bust center. Not someone I'm ever trusting, but he always has a high ceiling at low ownership, and that alone makes him appealing. CJ McCollum, high ceiling, low floor, 7,600. He's a decent play here as well. So I like McCollum. I like Jovel. Don't love either. But I would call Ingram a core play over on FanDuel. And as long as he starts, Josh Richardson is a core play for me over on DraftKings. So we see our lineup starting to come together now. Not a ton of value on the slate, but we do have a few interesting spots. Now we can talk about the Knicks, who are fully healthy other than Evan Fournier. I don't think he's going to make much of a difference either way. Jalen Brunson looks good, feels a little bit too cheap on both sides. He's kind of taken over that Darren Fox spot as like a good guard who's always a little bit cheaper than the other top guards. It's kind of funny to say, but if you're playing every night, I think you'll get what I mean. I like Jalen Brunson here. I think he's solid on both sides. Tough for me to call him a priority until I take a look at other pay up guards. But as things stand, I mean, he's a solid play here. Julius Randle in the front court, sub 10K on both sides. He's fine. Those are the two I'm really interested in. Mitchell Robinson's back from injury. That's going to take guys like Jericho Sims and Hartenstein out of consideration. Don't mind Robinson is kind of a boomer bust center, but I'll give him a few more games to get his legs back under him before I'm going to him aggressively. So the priorities here, maybe Jalen Brunson. I could see penciling him in right now, and maybe that's what I do. There's just a lot of good guards on this slate, so I don't think you have to force it. But at 8,400, really solid matchup against the Pels. I do like some Jalen Brunson. Um, and then over on DK as well, I'll pencil him in. Maybe I take him out for another guard in a little bit, but I think for now that's a decent spot to look. Um, Reasonably owned, a little bit higher owned than I'd like to see, but I imagine that does come down throughout the day as more value opens up at the guard positions. And not only can people play more value guards, but they could also pay up for some of the more expensive options. So I do like Jalen Brunson on both sides. Randall's fine, but no real priority plays for me on the Knicks. Um, Moving into the 8 o'clock window now, we've got the Nuggets at the Grizzlies, 235.5 point game total. The Grizzlies are 2 point favorites at home. Arguably the best game on the slate for fantasy purposes. I really like both sides of the ball here. Aaron Gordon's still out for Denver. Let's start with them. Nikola Jokic, if you can afford him, one of the best raw point plays on the slate. He's very expensive. He takes up that center spot over on FanDuel. But at the same time, I mean, it's tough to find a ceiling as high as his on the board here. There is another center, very comparable, who you could argue is just as good, if not better. But for me, I really like Jokic here. I mean, Memphis hasn't been great in the front court defensively with Steven Adams sidelined. Murray has been back, and Jokic is still putting up massive numbers. So I like Jokic a lot here. I prioritize him on both sides. I think he's excellent if you can afford him. Jamal Murray himself, let me take a quick look at him. He's been dealing with some injuries, but he was back last game, played over 33 minutes, so he's fine. But I'm going to go ahead and pencil in Jokic. Spoiler alert, Embiid is very comparable. I think you could go to either. For now, I'll go with Joker on both sides. And I will say this: some of my better lineups the other night had both Jokic and Embiid. We had a ton of value. I don't think we're going to be able to do that again tonight. But those are probably the two best plays on the slate, and I don't think you could go wrong either way. With Aaron Gordon out, we're seeing a little bit of extra usage goes to guys like Michael Porter Jr., Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. Bruce Brown's fine. I would prefer to see him in the starting lineup though. So really, it's Jokic here. Don't mind Murray. There's a lot of good guards. Don't mind Michael Porter Jr. He's a little bit overpriced on FanDuel. Better play on DK. And then KCP, excuse me, high ceiling, low floor, much better on DK where he's sub 5K, but no priorities for me here other than Jokic, really. Moving over to the Memphis side of things, Steven Adams, as I mentioned, is still out. Zaire Williams is out. Everything else looks like G League guys, so nothing we really need to dig too deep into. The big piece here is who's going to start at center against Jokic. If it's Brandon Clark, he's one of the best value plays on the slate. If it's Xavier Tillman, he's one of the best value plays on the slate. So we got to kind of wait and see. For me, I'm hoping it's Clark, and I do think it's going to be Brandon Clark. We saw him start last game. And the good thing about Brandon Clark here is you get power forward eligibility. So I'm going to go ahead and pencil Clark in. One of my preferred plays on both sites. He is a little bit expensive on FanDuel at that 5,300. Did not look great against Embiid last time out, but no real surprise there. I think that game turned into a little bit of a blowout. But regardless, Brendan Clark, one of your better value plays on the board. Much different matchup than it was against Embiid. But seeing him start against the big center, before the break, it seemed whenever they played a big, they had Tillman out there. But to see Clark start against Embiid, that tells me there's a good chance we see him starting tonight. We see he's one of the highest owned plays on the entire slate. So in tournaments, there's merit to fading him. But in cash games, he's kind of a staple of your lineups. Brendan Clark is a priority play for me on both sites. Again, as long as he's starting. If he's out, you're probably going to want to pivot. John Morant looks fine as a pay up guard, really solid upside. Nice correlation play with Jokic if you could fit them both. Dylan Brooks, obviously don't love the guy, but he does have upside for his price on DK at just 4,100. Don't mind him in tournaments. Jaren Jackson Jr. has been loading up on the blocks and steals. Very high ceiling. Mostly has that foul trouble under control this season, so he's been solid and consistent, which is nice to see out of him. So I don't mind Jackson where you can afford him. Desmond Bane's fine. Then again, if Tillman starts over Clark, Tillman is the better play, but that is a situation we need to keep an eye on. But as things stand, love me some John Morant. But Brandon Clark is the priority play for the Memphis Grizzlies. Moving into the 8:30 window now, we have a very good game here between the Celtics and the Sixers. Sixers are actually 1.5 point underdogs at home. We're looking at a 225 point game total here. Let's start over on the Boston side of the ball. No Danilo Gallinari. Other than that, this is as healthy as Boston has been all season. So we got Tatum here. He looks solid, not drawing any ownership. Obviously, a very high ceiling. I like him in tournaments. Jaylen Brown, a little bit cheaper, not the same ceiling, but low ownership. Nice upside, good tournament play. They got Williams and Horford healthy. Both are okay in tournaments. Neither are plays I'm prioritizing. I do like Derek White. He's on fire right now, but it's tough to want to get there with Brogdon and Smart both healthy. So in tournaments, I like all the Celtics starters. I even like Brogdon coming off the bench, but it's really tough to trust anything here against a tough Philly defense. I do think you could mix maybe one or two of these guys into your lineups. Feel pretty good about it. You're getting them all sub 5% owns. As things stand, Williams the only guy seeing over 5% ownership, and that's only on FanDuel where he's 6%. So there's appeal to these Celtics players from kind of a game theory type angle. But that being said, they're pretty expensive for a healthy team, and they are in a very difficult matchup. So can't call anything a priority there. Over on the Philly side of things, Dwayne Dedman's out. Dunk champion Mac McClung is out. Um, and that's really all over there as well. So another healthy team kind of priced where they should be. I penciled in Jokic. I have a slight preference for him as things stand, but if you want to go to Embiid at lower ownership, I totally get it. Similar ceiling, obviously not a great matchup against Boston. But at the same time, I mean, it's Joel Embiid. He can go off against anyone. James Harden's fine here, sub 10%. He looks okay. Not crazy about the Anthony Melton, especially drawing over 10% ownership on both sides. I do like Tyrese Maxey, though. He looks solid. Tobias Harris is still a little bit too cheap on DK at 5,300, but again, no priorities here. Just another healthy team, all kind of priced where they should be. I do like the 5,300 tag on Maxi over on DK. I mean, Melton at 3,500 as a last man in works as a piece of value. At least you know he'll get the minutes, but the usage just isn't there with this team healthy. Um, they added Jalen McDaniels. I like Harden. I like Embiid. Wouldn't call either a true priority, though. Moving into the 9 o'clock window and the last game on the slate, perhaps the most interesting for fantasy purposes, we have the Spurs at the Jazz. The Jazz are 9.5 point favorites at home. We're looking at a 241 point game total here. Let's start with the Spurs. So the Spurs are kind of tanking, pseudo tanking. It's tough to really trust Pop any night, but at the same time, there is some opportunity here. Jeremy Sochan coming back from injury, he looks fine on both sides. Devin Vassell's still out. Isaiah Roby's out. Romeo Langford's out. Trey Jones is questionable. If Trey Jones is out, I think there's a chance we see Devontae Graham start at point guard again. He'd become very appealing as guard value. If Malachi Branham gets to start at point guard, he's going to be the very appealing value play. But again, for me to want to get to either of them aggressively, I'm going to want Trey Jones out of the lineup. Zach Collins, where you're getting him at power forward over on FanDuel, 6,800. I don't mind paying up for him. I say paying up because it's the most expensive he's been all season, but with Jakob Poeltl now traded to the Raptors, he's becoming more appealing than he's been. Keldon Johnson, earlier in the season with the sellout, people were slamming him. Really high upside. He just hasn't been getting there consistently. I think part of it is because these guys are tanking. And yeah, I mean, at 7,200, he's been hitting value, but he's really not putting up huge ceilings. I do like him though. I think it's a good game environment. And if you think this game stays close, it's probably Keldon Johnson making that happen. So Keldon's solid here. But yeah, it's really tough to call anything a priority. I don't mind Charles Bassey. He's going to get the backup center minutes behind Zach Collins at just 3,500 over on DK. You get two center spots there, so I'm more comfortable kind of using him in that spot. But yeah, if Trey Jones ends, he's fine. I like Jeremy Sochan. As long as he starts, he's fine. But if Jones is out, Devontae Graham or Malachi Brandon are going to become very appealing, so keep an eye on that. Moving over to the Utah side, where we're seeing a ton of ownership. No Rudy Gay. Kelly Olynyk is questionable. Colin Sexton is still out. So first and foremost, we got to pencil in Taylor Horton Tucker. He's been outstanding. Whether he starts or comes off the bench, he's been smashing value every night. His price is up, but not as up as it maybe should be. I'm going to go ahead and pencil in Taylor Horton Tucker on both sites. I think he's one of the better value options we have. If Kelly Olynyk's out, that's going to secure minutes for Walker Kessler. They have been starting alongside each other, but that is a boost for Kessler. If Olynyk's out, we got to keep an eye on the situation. Regardless, I do like Kessler over on DK. I wouldn't really use him on FanDuel at 7,400 in the only center spot. He's drawing some ownership, but that's just not a play for me over there. I know you get the blocks and steal upside on FanDuel, but at the same time, to play that tag and miss out on a Jokic or Embiid, it's really tough for me to want to get there. Lauri Markkanen looks great on both sites, much better on FanDuel where he's only 8,600. I'm going to go ahead and pencil him in over there. If I do, I mean, we're only left with 4,100 per player, but like I said, we can maybe pull Brunson. He's not really a true core play for me. So this is a nice little start here, and you could pick Jokic or Embiid over on FanDuel. Feel pretty good about it. We're left with 6K per player over on DK. Um, but yeah, if Olynyk's in, he's okay. He's viable. But that's really it. I mean, Jordan Clarkson looks great on both sites. I forgot to mention him. 6,900 over on FanDuel. Instead of Brunson, maybe you go ahead and put in Jordan Clarkson. So you're left with just under 5K per player for point guard. You can move Clarkson up to point guard and look for value at shooting guard. But maybe one of those Spurs guards open up. But definitely keep an eye on news throughout the day. That's why it's a great idea to get into the Occupy Discord where we're updating things in real time. Also, the model we have on the site is going to update in real time as that news breaks. So if you hear, like, for example, Olynyk's ruled out, like not 10 or 15 minutes later, you're going to see the model adjust. You'll see the ownership adjust, the OF index value. Everything's going to adjust for guys like Markkanen and Kessler. You'll see a little bit of boost for them. But yeah, really good spot to look at tonight for Utah. We're through the game by game now. Just to quickly recap, I penciled in Brunson, Richardson. Make sure he starts on the Pels if you go there. Horton Tucker, core play. Kevin Love, if he starts, is a core play. Then take your choice of Jokic or Embiid. I think you can't go wrong either way. I have a slight preference for Jokic in the better matchup, but really like both those guys. And then Brandon Clark, as long as he starts, is a solid value at power forward. Same situation over on FanDuel, except we're getting discounts on Ingram and Markin, and probably wouldn't get to Josh Richardson over there. And then Clark, yeah, I mean, 5,300. I don't think you necessarily have to call him a core play on FanDuel, but if he starts, he's going to be tough to get away from. So a lot to like on this slate, just a 6 gamer. Still waiting on some news. Obviously, the Heat and Hornets are on a back-to-back. The Heat have been known to rest players on back-to-back, so definitely keep an eye on that situation. We could see a lot open up there. Taking a quick look at ownership, no surprises. I mean, Horton Tucker's up there, Brandon Clark, Clarkson, Richardson, over on DK. Kevin Love, again, just make sure he starts. Same situation over on FanDuel. No Richardson. You're going to see Lauri Markkanen kind of shoot up the board, though. Zach Collins, where you could play him at power forward. Excellent option over there. Once again, my name's Nick Marro. You can find me on Twitter at Nick Marro DFS. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel. Let's have some fun tonight, everyone, and make some money. Good luck and